In this video, we want to cover what just happened today on PPP loans and debt forgiveness under $50,000. So what this form is for, it's an SBA form 3508S, is that if you have a PPP loan that's under $50,000 and you've been wanting to get it forgiven, now there's even a shorter form. We had the 3508, that's the long form. Then we had the 3508EZ, and now we have the 3508S, the short form. So here, let's get to what's important. I'm going to get up to $50,000 in debt forgiven as long as my PPP loan was underneath that. Well, why can't I just sign it and send it in? Well, we had some rules we had to meet for the other two forms, the 3508 and the 3508EZ. And that was, if we reduced our wages or we reduced our salary, we may have to reduce the amount of debt forgiveness. If we reduced our full-time equivalents, our FTEs, we could also have to reduce. And there was all these complex calculations, you had the schedules. What they've now said, we're not even going to pay attention to that. So that's the free pass. So that's number one, the free pass. Number two is actually when we get to the form, we only have to put one number on the form. Then if I am sending this 3508 in, first, the rules say you have to ask for forgiveness. But secondly, when you get to the end and you sign the one-page form, there's an optional form. Most people probably will not do that. But when you go to sign the form, what you're actually saying is that I have spent the money. I have spent it on the four areas we've talked about before. I've spent it on my payroll. I've spent it on my mortgage interest. I've spent it on rent and utilities. And of that amount for the covered period, I have spent 60% of it on payroll cost. I still have to do the math. So this isn't just automatic. I have to do the math. I have to do the paperwork, but it's only on how I spent the money. I'm not doing the paperwork on the FTEs, and I'm not doing the paperwork on the salary or payroll deduction. Then, once I've done the math, you still have to do the math, but that calculations of how I spent it does not go in with this form. You keep that because in the instructions, SBA says we have the right to request documentation. At that point in time, they're going to look at the amount of the forgiveness. And this is what's important. There's one line on the form that has a number on it. And if I look here at the form, it says forgiveness amount. So what number do I put in there? That's the really only thing you need to worry about in order to sign this paper. You're still going to have to certify certain things, but actual calculations. What amount am I asking to be forgiven? What number do I put in there? Well, that's going to be limited to three things. One, it's going to be the amount of the PPP loan under $50,000. That makes sense. Limited to what we had as far as how we spent it. Did we spend it right? Did we spend it on payroll costs? Again, I'm repeating myself, mortgage, interest, rents, and utilities. And then thirdly, that I've spent at least 60% of it on payroll. For most of us, we've spent the expenditures because we have the option of the 8-week or the 24-week covered period to spend the money. And we can still have that choice. Based on that choice, and we fill out the paperwork and we keep it, we're going to put in this line here, forgiveness amount. And that's most likely going to be the amount of the loan. Now, before we leave this application, there's one other thing that I want to talk about, and that's whenever I look here at the form, we've now went through and gave, the loan number, your name, business address, ID number, etc. But it says below that, below the forgiveness amount, it says by signing below, you're making the following representation and certification on behalf of the borrower. And the first one I think is the most important one, and that says and I'll slow down here, the dollar amount for which forgiveness is required does not exceed the principal amount of the PPP loan and. So the first thing is, that amount we put in that box I just said cannot be greater than PPP loan. Secondly, it says we spent all of that PPP loan on eligible expenses. Thirdly, at least 60% of that was spent on payroll costs. And then finally, if we pick the 24-week period and we're self-employed, it says self-employed or partner, etc., we're capped at the $20,833 per individual. That's already in, that's the law no matter which one of the applications you do. And if you use the 8-week covered period, then our cap again on that owner, employee, self-employed partner is $15,385. And that's the rules we already have. At this point in time, if we can check that box and some other items, we're ready to sign the Form 3508S. We're ready to give it to our bank, and we're ready to ask for forgiveness. So in recap, it's good news for loans under $50,000. We don't have to worry about FTEs and salary and payroll deductions. We don't have to calculate that, worry about that. The only thing we have to worry about is what was the amount of PPP loan? Did we spend it on eligible costs, including 60% payroll, and didn't pay the owners too much we didn't use the owners' money we paid them over that $15,385 if we're using the 8-week period, or the $20,833 under the 24. You're now ready to sign the form, and we can go back to running our small business. Thank you. Hope this helps. Please subscribe. Spread the word, because this is going to help a lot of people sleep tonight because of the ease of this. And also keep your documentation, because SBA has the right to request it on your expenditures. Thank you, and have a great one.